All right, guys, welcome to leadership. Hello everybody. So we're gonna get started with the event. I'm really excited to welcome a very interesting person tonight at the campus of the University of the District of Columbia, our School of Business and Public Administration, and introduce Mr. Chip Raymond. He's a colleague of mine, a friend who's been introduced by my very dear friend, former presidential appointee under the one of the administrations within the government. Met in a very special place, and I met Mr. Raymond and was extraordinarily impressed. He has had a distinguished career in the military. I couldn't find his bio; it's classified. He's not recorded any longer. Mr. Chip Raymond, Mr. Raymond. And he's also had he's an executive, a former executive at Fortune 500 company, and it's somewhere. How many of you would like to run a Fortune 500 corporation? So when you do, our school needs an endowment. And so I've thought, since some of you are starting your careers, some of you are in the middle of your careers, and I'm not sure where you're going to be, but most likely most of you will end up working either for a government organization in the United States or a corporation. Be it worldwide. And so I figured you might have questions how organizations are run. Anybody has ever had a textbook? Okay, well, textbooks don't tell you how organizations really work. And so I figured that to bring in a person with about 50 years of experience in those systems, who has been successful and is doing actually quite extraordinary things today. I don't know if you know, Mr. Raymond is sailing around the world on a sailboat, and he just told me he sailed 4 times, and that's his hobby. And he actually knows how to, if he's lost at sea, he knows how to find ways. Which is,
I made it.
So anyway, so I would like to welcome him. Please ask questions to our campus.
Okay, we're going to have some fun tonight because I'm going to rain on you, correct? What I've selected to chat about tonight is organizational dysfunction. Okay, you're going to get a whole lot of stuff between now and whenever about how organizations function, but I'm going to tell you a little bit about how they don't function. And hopefully by the end of this 45-minute period, you might have a couple of little models that I can draw on the whiteboard, and some words that I gathered over 50 years of working in the government and in the private sector. So the whole idea behind what I'm doing is sort of took place over 15 years at George Mason University, where I taught the same sort of stuff. And the idea is that you approach these organizations with some eyes wide open. Okay, not everything that glitters is going to be gold. Now, after 50 years, I have seen almost all of the bad side of some organizations, whether they're in the government or whether they're in the private sector. So we'll get started with that. Now, ask any question anytime you want. I am not politically correct. I wander around the room, so it's going to be hard to capture me on the camera. If you have to go somewhere and come back, that's fine with me. You're not going to upset. I draw large cartoons. I'm an engineer by trade. My life has been nothing but precision mathematics and physics. So, that reminds me.
Where's the light?
Okay.
Here we go.
Yes. I just want to write one thing up here. Don't use your calculator. At the end of the class, we'll just see what you come up with. Not right now. We'll see what you come up with. Okay, the first thing we want to talk about is organizational structure. Now, here's something that I've learned over a long period of time. Who wanted to run the Fortune 500 company? Ah, yes. When you don't know what else to do, reorganize. When you don't know what else to do, reorganize. The last company that I was with, I stayed there about 8 years, and they went through 7 reorganizations. I didn't even know where the building I was supposed to work in was after one of them. And this is a Fortune 500 company that was bringing in about $18 billion a year in revenue. Worldwide, a global company, had plants all over the place. So what's the lesson involved there? It goes to leadership in this case. So they will tell you that we're reorganizing because the customer is reorganizing. Well, one of the lessons you can take away from tonight, number one, is whenever you want to get in on the bad side of the customer, then confuse them. They don't know who they're dealing with. So organizational structures follow a common form follows function, or function follows form. That's been an argument for a very long time. What should it be? Function follows form, or form follows function? Any ideas?
Function follows forms.
Function should follow form. Who says form follows function? I'm surprised. Usually about half the room says one and the other half says another, and we get a good argument going. So,
Yeah.
okay. Organizational structures can be defined as form follows function. The form of the organization
You're talking about the chart.
follows the function of the organization. Or should it be the function of the organization follows the form? Which should it be? Say that again. Form follows function, okay? That's kind of the way it turns out for some of the better organizations. All right, if you take the university, for example, the function of this room, this university sells what? It sells a seat. You got it, A+. Give this one, write it down. This university sells a seat. When you get on an airplane, what does the airplane sell? A seat. So now we're talking form and function, or function and form. But you see, when you take this all the way down, organizations get confused about that. This one organization I worked for, when I first went there, life was good. Everybody was happy. Not only were they happy, they were productive. As a matter of fact, each year they were bringing in an additional, 11 to 12% in revenue, which was pretty good at the time. And then the chief executive officer of the organization decided that he had had enough and retired, and they brought somebody else in. What's the first thing he did? Reorganize. So,
Not to cut you, we're going through that just down here too.
you're doing that
We have a
now?
new president, so we're just reorganizing.
Yes. So, so I'm watching all of this now. I've got a large number of years in the U.S. Army. Before that, I was a baby. So I went in the Army at 17. Then I came out, and then I went into the private sector. So I've watched government organizations operate, and watched the university operate at George Mason University, and watched the Fortune 500. I won't mention the name, but it's here. The headquarters is here.
In DC?
The list, not from DC, in Virginia. At least it was here last week. They might have reorganized it.
New ownership.
But I think the worst thing you can do to employees is to keep continuously reorganizing to where they don't know which way's up. And after a while, it affects morale. And you know what happened to this organization is that after the third or fourth reorganization, people started leaving the company. Now, it was a high technology company. As an engineer, that's what I did. I retired as the chief technology officer. So my job was to stay ahead of technology and to be able to deal with it. And some of my best people, what we called in those days Jedi Knights. You know what a Jedi is?
Yes.
These were the Jedi Knights.
With the force. They'll bring the force.
May the force be with you.
May the force be with you. These guys were amazing. You know, the men and women that I worked with were top-notch technologists. They were typically introverted. They didn't say much. And if you kept them in new computers and pizzas, they were very happy. So we had a shop of about 300 and some technologists that were doing a lot of research and development in areas of writing software and developing microprocessors and things of that nature. But after a while, they just get tired of trying to figure out which way is up. So they started leaving the company. And they went to some of them went to our competitors. The competitors were offering them a better deal, you know, a little bit more stability. So back to the phrase, when you don't know what else to do, reorganize. I'm watching all this and I'm trying to figure out how long I'm going to last. So during that period of time, they went through, in terms of reorganization, 4 acquisitions of new companies they bought and 6 reductions in force. So you get up Monday morning, you don't know if you're going to have a job Friday afternoon because they're reorganizing so fast you don't know where it is. And then when they start buying these other companies, they do what's known as 2 in a box. You ever heard of that? They put 2 managers in a box, and the one that survives keeps the job. Of course, the box is the performance. You know? So let's say company A acquires company B and they have the similar function and form. So they integrate the function. The form in terms of the people winds up as 2 in the box. And if you haven't already experienced that, you'll have the breathtaking opportunity to do that at least once in your career. So the organizations that I've been dealing with over these past 40, 50 years. Some survived, others have not. But the stability of reorganization is a big deal. Watch out when you go out there, if you're not yet into the private sector or whatever, about that idea that every time I don't know what to do, I'm going to reorganize the company. If you see that happening around you, don't take it personal. It's business. It's what, and they are not out to get you in this case. They just don't know what to do, so they keep reorganizing. The downside to that is that they confuse their customers. There's nothing worse in the world than a confused customer, because they'll go somewhere else. So they can't deal with it.
When they reorganize, they change the intranets too. That's where the customers sleep.
Mostly when they merge. So you get a company that has their own networks and information technology and they merge it into another company. And then they have to merge these networks all the way down to email addresses. So it's quite a technological thing to do, and it can be pretty rough.
So,
But when they are reorganizing, they don't see the consequences that is they want to lose the business, most of their clients or customers, rather than like finding maybe a way to keep it running in some way. Let's try it to.
The good ones do, but most of them are not good. All they want to do is reorganize as quickly as possible and get back on the pathway of making a profit.
Oh, that's what I thought you were doing. Problem.
Yeah.
It's about problem.
Well, private sector is all about, the bottom line is money. Okay? The bottom line is money, and if you think you're working for a company that has that kind of loyalty to you, don't forget for 1 minute that, especially consulting companies, if a consulting company hires you, they're going to consult you out.
Yeah.
Say, I want $125,000 a year as my income. The company says, let's look at the credentials. This guy and this lady have exceptional credentials. We can get $150,000 a year. We'll pay them $125,000 a year, and we're making a percentage of profit. As soon as you get stale or old, you're out the door.
So the merger between America West, where they bought, when they supposed to bought U.S. Airways, and U.S. Airways turned around and bought American, and now the new American, is that typical for what you're saying, that they go through these cycles of
Oh, yeah.
merging, organizing,
Yeah.
reorganizing, and everybody's confused as to what, because right now,
They don't know which way's up.
U.S. Airways actually bought American Airlines, but they kept the American Airlines name, so it's like
That's-
they're the CEO of America West is now the CEO of American Airlines.
Right. And I've flown on them a few times. You certainly you don't want to confuse your customer.
Yeah.
It could be hazardous to your health. But if you want to see a company that's gotten very, very good at acquisitions, look at Oracle Corporation. Oracle, I think, the last time I checked, Oracle had purchased 27 different companies over its time. And they are monolithic. When you think of Oracle, there's no other branding of it. It is Oracle. They buy these smaller companies that have good ideas, and then they bring them into their sort of home.
What did Oracle
Oracle's
start
got,
out as?
Oracle's a database company.
Oh, that's what it, okay.
It started out as a database company. Today, it's a global powerhouse.
Yeah.
All right, so that's lesson number one, is whenever you find an organization that's in a continuous reorganizing mode, watch out. Because you could get reorganized right out of a job.
As a leader, how do you keep your employees motivated if you keep on reorganizing all the time?
Inform them. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that later on. One of the worst tenets of leadership is not keeping everybody informed. You speak to your people, tell them what's happening. Be honest with them. Don't glitter things up and then you suddenly walk in Friday and here's your pink slip. We don't need you. I've seen that happen too many times. It's devastating. Sir.
Yeah, I mean, reorganizing sounds like a nice band-aid. It seems like you made people was wrong, just reorganize. What I'd like to know is, what are some of the hardest decisions you have to make that don't involve reorganizing?
Some of the toughest decisions you have to make involve what's known as competitive advantage. Now, competitive advantage, to me, in my experience, is product differentiation and price point. So a lot of times price point, this is where it gets tough. Your competitors are selling something, and you're selling something. How do you compete with them? You drop the price, or you differentiate the product. Take, for example, Apple. That's the first company in recorded history that ever hit $1 trillion. $1 trillion in annual revenue. How did Apple do that? By being smarter than everybody else or by product differentiation? It certainly wasn't price point. Who owns an Apple here? Right, MacBook. It wasn't price point, it was product differentiation. And they have a very loyal following. Vice Microsoft, which is my favorite company to hate. I won't get into that. Does that answer your question? So competitive advantage, and by the way, the other way you get competitive advantage is buy his company. He's got a better mousetrap than you do, buy it. Make him an offer you can't refuse. Merge him in and reorganize. Okay, the next item I want to discuss with you, let's see if I got my handy dandy piece of paper. It's hot in here, isn't it?
Yeah.
All right, We're going to talk a few minutes about agendas. Everybody in this room has an agenda. Everybody. Not only that, but you have more than one agenda. At least two. What you're going to find out in the world out there, for those of you that get started, and for those of you that have been out there for a while, is that the hidden agenda will get you. It's not too hard to figure out what somebody's agenda is physically and open. And you usually see that pretty much right away. But it's the hidden agendas in organizations that will come to bite you in the backside. Let me give you an example. One of my habits, I would start to say bad habits, every meeting I used to go to, I would sit there silently for about 15 minutes, which really bothered a lot of people. I wouldn't say a word. Sometimes I ran the meeting. I'm just sitting there looking at everybody. After about 15 minutes, somebody's going to crack. They don't like silence. Somebody's going to crack and say, "What are we doing here?" And that's when I would say, "Well, what would you like to do here? This meeting is about this." And so we would get underway. But I always tried to figure out what the hidden agenda of these folks at the meeting were, because that's what I was really playing to. You follow what I'm saying? If you can figure out the hidden agenda of the individuals at these meetings, you will be much better off. Everybody has an open agenda. I'm here to, contribute. When the hidden agenda might be, I'm here because I don't like this person beside me, and I want her job. So I'm going to do whatever it takes to make her look bad so that I can compete for her job later on. Hidden agendas are dangerous. Once you figure out how to read a hidden agenda, then you'll be a bit better off. You won't win all the battles because there's always a quicker person. But again, don't take it personal. It's business. Sir.
As a new employee at a say a big firm, what's the best way to actually do that, to figure out the hidden agenda?
Keep your mouth shut. Nobody wants a new employee to talk too much. Pretty soon you give yourself away. So you don't want to confirm for everybody that you might not know what you're talking about.
I have a follow-up to that. So last summer I interned at PricewaterhouseCoopers, and one thing I did was be silent, listen and stuff. And then during my review, one of the things I got not written up, but one of the things that they mentioned was that I didn't talk enough. So like I'm getting mixed signals. Some people saying when you're new you shouldn't talk, other people saying you should talk. So I was like kind of confused about that.
There's a caveat to that. Okay, you keep your mouth shut. Here's the meeting. We're sitting here talking a whole lot, and at the end of the meeting, he says, what did we accomplish here? I need to get it straight in my head. So you ask this $64,000 question of everybody in the meeting, and you're going to write down exactly what happened. So the idea behind that is you force people to go back to the original purpose of the meeting and restate the purpose of that meeting and what got accomplished. Ma'am.
So do you think like is it like too dangerous for the hidden trainer?
To what?
Do you think like it's really dangerous for like in the meeting or something?
It depends on the culture of the organization as well. Organizations have multiple cultures. If you're in PricewaterhouseCoopers, that is a consulting company. They get paid for knowledge. It's a knowledge management company. So it's always risky to keep quiet for too long. So you come up, with your own pearls of wisdom. But originally, when you decided you didn't want to contribute, then there was a reason behind that. You're learning silently, or you're learning, by talking. The whole idea behind this hidden agenda is that you got to watch out for the people around you to make sense of where they're coming from. But for me, I always liked to, at the end of the meeting, I would say, I forgot what this meeting was for. it says we're having a meeting about X, Y, Z, and we didn't talk about that at all. We decided to go this way. So can we restate so that I can learn here what's going on? Now, let me talk about cultures and organizations ever so briefly. Every organization has its own culture. Now, I'm an engineer. Engineers can be type A or type B people. When you're an engineering firm of type A's, everybody's trying to choke each other because they always have a better idea. So you have to fight to get your ideas out. And of course, in an engineering type environment, the best idea is the one that works. So you usually let that work for you. The introvert in an engineering guy is where good leadership is going to look at them and say, well, let's, as I said before, let's put them by themselves with a computer and all the pizza they can eat and let them develop. Does that make sense? So now, consulting companies, I worked for KPMG. In those days, it was called Pete Marley. And consulting companies are basically prima donnas. They know more than you do. They're always going to know more than you do. And they can really ruin a company.
Yeah.
Now, let me finish. I'm going to make a statement you can write down. I have seen more management consultants force companies into bankruptcy than you can imagine. I've seen good leadership rescue that company. So I'm fond of management consulting companies. They do a great job. There's one in particular that I'm not fond of for reorganization purposes, and that's the Boston Consulting Group. Anybody ever deal with them?
Yeah, I learned about them.
Yeah, they came into the organization I was, and they leveled it out, and got rid of 15 different layers, and about 17,000 employees gone out the door in less than a year. I thought they could have done a better job than that.
So did they get more revenue cut? Did it work?
Well, yeah, when you cut 17,000
Yeah,
employees.
sure, I know that. I didn't mean it. Okay, well,
Yeah.
I got you.
So that brings it up to my third point, is that there's no such thing as loyalty. There is absolutely no such thing as loyalty. I hate to rain on your parade, guys, but if you work for me, I'm not going to be loyal to you. I don't expect you to be loyal to me. Here's the reason why. What you have between your ears is your most valuable capital. You're not here for no reason at all. You're here to increase the value of your capital. Your capital has 2 feet. It can move around industry pretty rapidly. Loyalty is a very hard thing to define in that kind of environment today. When I first started working, the company person was all about loyalty. You stayed with the company all your life. You got the gold watch and you retired at 70 years old, and then 2 years later you're in your grave. That is not the way it is today in the industry I was in, and probably the industry you will be in or you're in already. Loyalty is a two-way street as well. So once you begin to expect loyalty from an organization, then they got to give it back to you. And so I don't want you to get the impression that most of these companies are loyal to their employees. They will sing that song all day long. But make no mistake, if you are not pulling your fair share, you are out the door. Because they're not going to continue to pay that kind of money. So it's, I've seen this happen too many times to count in terms of loyalty, especially with younger folks coming in a bunch of years ago, like to work for Google or some of these other organizations. They got into an organization that is that fashions itself as a birth to death process. You work for us forever. So if you've been following the news, you know some of these companies have begun laying off people. They've gotten a bit too big, and it's starting to hit the bottom line. Any questions so far? Yeah.
I'm just trying to find out how much, in the School of Public Administration, in the MPA program.
Yeah.
And I'm always curious to know why there is a discrepancy in terms of productivity between the private sector and the public sector. From a cultural perspective, what do you think accounts for this discrepancy?
Okay, so the question is, what accounts for the discrepancy in productivity between a public organization, read that government, and a private industry, read that profit?
Yes.
Okay? So, and that's a great question. That's a great question. Now, most people that work for the government want to do a good job. They want to do a good job until they figure out that not doing a good job has no penalty at all. I cannot be fired. I'm a tenured professor.
Yeah, that's how they do it.
Then you generate two types of people there. Doesn't matter to me. I still want to do a good job. So I think the differentiation in the time I have to explain is that in the private sector, you have a customer that's depending on a service you're providing and paying for it. In the government side of the house, you have a customer that expects a service from you, but you have no idea where the money is going. So there's no visible way to measure success. For the private sector, you live or die on the bottom line, especially if you're a publicly traded company. You know, in the lobby of the company I worked for, they had the Dow Industrial streaming across these big television screens. And every moment of the day, you could see what the stock price was doing. And if an announcement came out of quarterly earnings with 1% below what they forecasted, the stock started going down. So everybody was focused on making sure that that company was doing a good enough job to keep the stock prices up, the revenue coming in, etc. When I worked for the government, I didn't work for the government. Okay, being in the Army is not a job; it's a commitment, a life commitment. So our customers was everybody involved. You know, we didn't interface with the public all that much. We were soldiers, and this is over a long period of time. But you can, you know, it's not a profit-making business. So it wasn't until I became a government civilian that I actually saw that discrepancy. I'll give you an example. I ran a software engineering center at Fort Belvoir, and our job was to build warfighter support stuff. And this was during the early 1991, 1992. We were developing software quickly and taking it to the field to provide support for 17, 18-year-old soldiers out there. So I had a bunch of employees that were goofing off. And I got a little perturbed at them. So I went out and got myself a life-size cutout, about that tall, of a soldier that was dirty, and nasty, and tired. About 18 years old. He was on one knee. And I put it right in the middle of the bullpen where everybody worked. And I put a little sign on it that they had to look at every morning when they came to work. And the sign said, "This is who you work for." An 18-year-old kid. They were depending on it. So you see, that I tried to do. And it worked. It worked for a while. Yes, ma'am.
I was saying like a two-part question. When you was talking about the function and the form, for like say the government, when they were talking about the shutdown, I was threatening the shutdown.
Yeah.
Do they have a function or do they have a form?
You answered that question. Do they have a function? If they shut down, do you lose sleep?
Well, yeah.
Yeah. That's
So
a
they
function.
So they basically, the government is basically function to form.
Well, that's a good question. It depends on what part of the government. All right, so let's take, for example, water purification. It's run by the government here. The district, Del Carlo is where you get your water from the spigots. You don't want them shutting down because the function of providing water is important. But there might be some other offices around that, you know, am I going to miss you? Would you like to take 30 days off? Hey. So it depends on what it is. You know, there's certain parts of a government operation that provide a useful service that everybody depends on. Water purification, you know, traffic safety. What if all the stoplights went off in DC right now? Gone. I wouldn't get home till midnight. It's bad enough around here with the stoplights working. I took the train in, by the way, just for that reason. It scares me. Okay, so the next item I want to talk about is the difference between business and taking things personal. So here's something to take away. In an organization, if it seems like somebody's out to get you, they are. You can write that down. If it seems like somebody's out to get you, they are. So you have to assume that from the very beginning. Otherwise, it's the ostrich head in the sand. Now, what should you do about that? Well, you have choices. In many organizations that I've been with, both in the middle level and the upper level, as a leader in the organization, if I found somebody that was operating under that premise, it was my job to make sure that they didn't know that I'm not out to get you. I'm interested in what you're doing. A lot of people are so touchy that if you come up to their desk and sit down, like I have a habit of doing, and saying, "What you doing today?" There's instant speculation that you're doing something. Why are you doing this? Why are you messing with me? Well, I'm interested in what you're doing. So we'll talk about that a little later on. It's called management by walking around. But I had the habit of going up to my employees. Every day I'd pick one of the divisions and I'd go sit with every single employee and talk to them about what they were doing, what kind of help they needed, and whether we were all doing a good job. Well, what's your view of what we're doing? Are we doing okay? You'd be surprised at the answers we get from them. It runs all the way from, I don't know why I'm even here. I don't do anything. All the way to just abject excitement. I can't wait to come to work in the morning. Yeah. But you know, the idea behind management by walking around, a little later on we'll get into. If you think somebody's out to get you, and you believe that, they generally are. So how do you go and address that issue? Just sit down and talk. Again, it's about communication. Sir?
Yeah, which way do you think that you'll receive, I guess, the most honest answer from employee? If you do, like you said, go up to an employee and ask them, what do you think? Or just have them write something anonymous and like you have a survey or something, have them do it anonymously.
I don't like surveys. I figure surveys sort of scratch an itch. They give the employee a chance to mouth off anonymously. Okay. Companies that deliver surveys make a whole lot of money doing that. I'm not going to pay you to do a survey. I'm just going to go talk to every one of them. Why wouldn't I do that? Why wouldn't I sit with you and find, were you going to be honest with me and tell me you're not happy here or you'd like to do something else? After about 2 months of knowing me, then it'll all come out. I'm not happy. Because I was genuinely interested in what you're doing. After all, I am paying your wages. That's the idea behind it. Yes, ma'am.
In the class, we have been talking about competition and collaboration.
Yeah.
So when you're talking about what you were just talking about for walking around and somebody out to hit you, so nowadays we're talking about it's more competition than it is collaboration. But in the older days, it was more collaboration. So walking around or talking to somebody, do you think now it can get back to collaboration? Because right now it's competition.
Right now, it is competition, but there are companies out there that don't reorganize every other week, where the team cohesion of the company, each team member feels like they're valuable and they're providing a valuable service to the overall mission. We'll talk about that. Now, everybody here is competing for something, either at work or at home or something else. There's nothing wrong with competition. There's nothing wrong with collaboration. But let's go back to our knowledge, our management consulting company. What do they sell?
Knowledge.
Knowledge, right. How do they sell knowledge? How?
Communication?
Well, you're close. It's called knowledge transfer. All right. So if you hire a knowledge management company, otherwise known as a consulting company, they are, by contract, going to come in and either teach you or show you or do for you something that you can't do on your own or you need help with. Knowledge transfer is the whole idea behind consulting that way. Now here's the difference between a good company and a bad company in the knowledge management business. People, individuals, sitting at this table here, have their own set of capital knowledge, what's in your head. Where it goes awry, where it becomes a tough thing, is when you don't share knowledge with your fellow employee because you're afraid she's going to steal it. Okay, that's when the whole system breaks down. So that means I don't trust you. I don't trust you with my knowledge. I'm going to be competitive with you because I know something different and you know something. Well, I'm the leader and I'm going to force you to do it. And then both of you will get rewarded for collaborating. I can't grow if you're not collaborating. So again, we go back to the communication thing. So the whole idea behind communication is to do just that. Now it's not that way in a lot of other organizations. You know, I mean, my experience is in engineering, mathematics, physics, science. So collaboration there is an absolute must. So other forms might be a little different. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, it's just going back to the hidden agenda. You mentioned we should watch out for people with hidden agenda in an organization. So when we watch out for them and we discover those with hidden agendas, how do we deal with them?
Well, once you understand what the hidden agenda is, then you can feed it. Once you feed a hidden agenda, you own the person. That sounds pretty bad, doesn't it? But if I figure out what your hidden agenda is and I can feed it, I can get you to do almost anything for me because I'm feeding that hidden agenda. Smart leaders will figure that out. Smart managers won't know what the hell they're looking at, but smart leaders will figure that out. So everybody here has a hidden agenda. I won't know you long enough to feed it tonight. But that's exactly what we're talking. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
So once you figure out what it is, then you can control it a little bit by doing that.
Question, Raymond. Are most Fortune 500 CEOs Ivy League graduates? If so, why?
Are most, God, I hope I have seen Harvard Business School ruin more businesses. I would rather go to a small business school to get, my MBA is from George Mason.
What was the question?
To do it, yeah.
If most Fortune 500 CEOs are from Ivy League, if they are, why?
Well, I'll give you my opinion for what it's worth. I think if you've got a degree from Harvard or Dartmouth or any of those, there's an implied value proposition that you know exactly what you're doing.
Right.
Okay, so 4 out of 5 of them have no earthly idea because all they've done in college is go to parties. So, by my way, when I've hired managers, I looked at small schools that had entrance requirements that were rigorous, small classes, people that could speak and write. And, you know, I never hired an Ivy Leaguer just for that. And not that I'm biased, I'm just prejudiced.
How do you hire? How do you know who's the best candidate for your?
For me, how did I do it?
Yeah, you hire.
What were my trick questions?
Well, I mean,
Yes.
as long as you've been in the business, you can. Don't you have some sort of like this is your perception when do you really? Or
Well, after 50 years, you get sort of used to interviews, and there's a whole lot of BS running around.
yeah, well, they're trying to.
Yeah, and I understand that a resume is a marketing tool. You know, you're trying to get a job, and I'm trying to fill a position. So when I was looking for people, especially engineers, I wasn't interested in so much as what you could do. I was interested in how you did it. If you could explain to me how you used engineering to accomplish what you said you do, then I'm interested because you can actually apply what you've learned. So when you're young and just starting out, it's kind of tough because you don't have a lot of experience, so you've got to shift your focus to action verbs. So one of the action verbs, you understand what I'm saying there? This is the one I use the most. POSLOC. POSLOC. Planning, organizing, staffing, leading, and controlling. Okay, when I was writing or reading resumes, I looked and tried to categorize everything that this individual did in terms of planning, and then organizing an effort, and then if they had the chance, how they staffed it, and then even better, how they led the operation, either through management or project leads or whatever, and lastly, how they controlled success of the project. Every single word that I looked for under those 5 areas was an action verb. I actually did this, and this is how I did it. So, does that make sense?
Makes a lot of sense.
The other one in engineering is called D3S. That's important for engineers because that's design, develop, deploy, and sustain. If one of those is missing, it's not successful. Design, develop, deploy, and sustain. Question? Somebody had a question back. No?
I did. I had
Yes, sir.
that.
Yes, ma'am.
My question was, you said earlier that, years ago, you said that people would stay on a job from, I guess, from inception until 70 when they retire. I recently stayed on a job, and I hate this, that I worked for a no for 16 years. I now work here, it's a better job, pays better, and I get to go to school for free. What would you suggest, what's the time that you suggest giving a job? They say now that millennials, they'll give you 5 years, and after 5 years, they're gone.
That's it. 5 years. If I was starting over again, there's 2 things I would do. I would always pick the job that paid the most money, no matter what it was, even if I hated doing it. And I'd stay in it for 5 years. Because once I establish the salary level that I'm looking at, and I've got the experience of 5 years, I can start bidding my value up. Because again, you guys sitting here right now more than ever before in any generation, your best value is between your 2 ears. It's what you know and how you apply it. There's not a whole lot of factories around here anymore. It's all knowledge management. Make sense? Okay. What time do we have a hard stop? What time?
We have to finish about 15 minutes,
15 minutes, okay.
20 minutes at the most.
One of my favorites. Connected. How many people here have a smartphone? Everybody should raise their smartphone. We are so connected today that I'll tell you a little story before I get into my rant and rave about being connected. Probably 15 years ago now, I had a boss, and email was kind of new. Believe it or not, we didn't have email before this. An original email was MS-DOS, and you had to know all sorts of programming languages to write an email to somebody who may or may not check it every 6 months. It just was not the thing to do. It's come a long way. Well, this one individual, and this is when we first picked up what Microsoft called Outlook at the time. In the government, it was called PROFS, P-R-O-F-S. I have no idea what that stands for. But this guy managed by email. I didn't see him all day long. He stayed in his office with the door closed, and he sent emails out. That's how he managed an organization that I worked in. So I've got a very low temper threshold. After a while, I get angry easy. So this guy would send out emails at 2 o'clock in the morning and expect an answer. Oh, really? And it got worse. He would send emails out in the weekend and expect an answer. Until one day I just went up, banged on the door, and walked in. He's sitting there eating pickles and writing. I said, "Look here, Bruce, we're going to have a talk. What do you want to talk about?" I said, "You can send all the emails you want between 8 and 5, and I might answer them. But after 5 o'clock and on weekends, you're going to wait till Monday morning." Well, we have an organization. You have an organization to run. I'm telling you how it is with me. So I have another life to live. Today, that's over. It's done. I have an iPhone over here, and people send me emails all night long and on the weekend. Now, there's an upside and a downside. If you're connected to all of that, you can actually get the pulse of what's going on at any given time. That's great. It's good to know that stuff. But at the other side of the coin is you don't do any management by walking around anymore. Now we're such a disjointed, well, I shouldn't say disjointed, but distributed operational concept in the country that, you know, the company that I worked for, when we had a meeting, we could conference in people from other parts of the world. So that's a big upside. They were connected. We could talk to them and things like that. But being connected today means 24/7. And I'm one of those old dinosaurs that doesn't really like that at all. As a matter of fact, today if I went to work and you said, "Well, I expect you to answer my emails at 3 o'clock in the morning," I would say, "Well, then you need to pay me more." I'll be happy to be online 24/7 and on the weekends. But you know that little annual salary? You got to go up. You're going to have to pay me. If you want that knowledge, you're going to have to pay me. So don't give it away for free. You're already doing it anyway. But don't give it away for free. And you know, my brother is 16 years younger than I am, and he's always online. It's either Facebook or Twitter, an iPad. He's got 4 iPads hanging around his neck, iPhone. He's got everything. And if you say something and he hears about it, then it's going to come back to him. What did you mean by this? I just ignore it. Monday morning at between 8 and 9 o'clock, that's when I answer phones. I'm just kidding. I'm a little connected too. Okay. Another thing I wanted to talk to you about visionary sightfulness. Visionary sightfulness. Okay, so I'm an engineer, first off. So if I happen to misspell a word, write it down. Because it is a very poor engineer that can only figure one way to spell a word. Visionary sightfulness. Okay, so you're looking for somebody that's got visionary sightfulness. Now, why would you want to do that?
They can see trends later on in the future that maybe.
Yes, you're third right so far.
They can innovate.
They can innovate.
They can show or see where a company's planning on going.
Absolutely. Visionary sightfulness. Well, it turns out, in real life, there are 3 phases of visionary sightfulness. 3 of them. One is called hindsight. What does hindsight mean? Well, I'll give you an example. English common law, especially here in the United States and in Great Britain, is based on precedents. Okay? What precedents means is something occurred in the past that we must learn for today. So hindsight learns from mistakes made in the past to keep from repeating them in the present. So you want a leader or a manager, if you're looking to work with one or be one yourself, to have the gift of hindsight, to be able to look in the past and learn from those things you need to learn from to keep your organization on the pathway to success. That is easy for me to say and hard for you to do. Let me give you an example. How many people here work in a company today that has a lessons learned library? A place you can go online and ask a question of, not Google, not Wikipedia, but in the company that says, here's how we've done this in the past. Somebody raise a hand here, tell me. I'm getting depressed. Nobody has lessons
What
learned?
about print screen?
Print screen?
Print screen, like,
Right now?
like if they print screen, how they've done particular.
You mean flow chart? Yeah, print a flow chart. Yeah, that. I mean, if you even the smallest lessons learned library. Well, I'll save you the trouble. Consulting companies sell knowledge. They make a good living on it, and they basically have very large libraries of lessons learned. Knowledge management. That's a big deal for them. Your doctor, your medical doctor, has 5,000 years in terms of a body of knowledge behind them. The largest body of knowledge outside engineering in the earth today. Those 2 professions, medical science and engineering, have thousands of years of lessons learned. Okay? Information technology is 50 years old. The body of knowledge underlying information technology today is just infantile. And we're still learning at rapid rates. Computers today are making us dumber by the moment. You know how that's happening? Real quick, I'll show you. Simple graph. That's the rate at which you're getting data and saving it. That's the rate at which you're getting data and saving it. What is the mathematical formula for that? Y equals AX raised to the power B. If B is greater than 1, it's an exponential equation, and it's increasing at an increasing rate. You've heard of big data analytics. Well, it's here. The problem today is the computers that we use are going this way. The difference between there is the knowledge quotient. We can't make sense out of data fast enough for it to be valuable, yet we're saving more and more of it. For an IT guy, there's a lot of business right there. That's where big data came from, and that's why, in terms of technology leaping into something new, when we finally get into higher speed computing capabilities, like quantum computing, we may be able to crunch data rapidly enough to make timely decisions when it counts. We can't do that right now to the extent that we'll be able to do it 5 years from now or 10 years from now. But that's how computers today are making us dumber by the minute. Okay. The next one here in terms of visionary sightfulness is insight. What's that? What's insight?
The person who analyzes the system.
There's an easier way. What is insight? When you tell somebody, a friend of yours, that you're very insightful, what did you just do?
They have present knowledge that.
Present.
Present.
It's in the present. There's the key word. Hindsight is past. Insight is present. That means your leadership, your management skills, as you begin to generate them, you not only have to be able to look at the past, but you've got to look at the present at the same time and start weighing things. The last sightfulness, visionary thing is what?
Foresight.
Foresight.
And that's future.
And that is future. The purpose of all of this right here is visionary sightfulness for organizations and people that can learn how to do this are going to be far better off. If you only know one of them, which one would that be?
Foresight.
Why?
Because we're evolved into the future. We need to be mindful of the past and the present, but we're migrating to the future because today is lost and tomorrow is due on us.
You're hired. So you're going to be my foresight person. Who says insight? Nobody? Come on, don't be bashful. Who's very insightful right now? I live in the present. I'm aware of what's going on around me. I'm aware of the people around me, etc., etc. Insight. You're hired. So now I got 2 of the 3. Hindsight. All right, gotcha. Lots of hindsight here. That's the easiest one because you can read.
Professor.
Yes.
Good question though.
Yeah.
I think what I'm not hearing is a piece of that whole visionary sightfulness is the emotional intelligence piece. Where does that fit into that one?
Assumptions. Assumptions. You know, the intellectual maturity to be able to understand what it is you're dealing with. I used to say a fool with a tool is still a fool. You got to be careful of that. So you are looking for that sort of intellectual maturity to be able to deal on all that stuff. How do you do that? Well, you don't wake up one morning. You've got to learn. And most of the time you get a lot of scars. Learn. Okay, to help you with that, here is one of the models I told you about. Now you can write this down and you can use it for the rest of your life. This is called a solution pyramid. Okay? And it can be used to solve almost every problem in your organizational structure or your career that you can deal with. At the very top is policy and guidance. Policy and guidance has an architecture. It absolutely has an architecture. In terms of your sightful visionariness, you want to look at the architecture of the policy and governance of an organization that governs everything it does. If it's not there, you are in a heap of trouble. That means anything goes. Most all organizations should have a healthy policy and governance architecture. Most of the time you will find policies and governance that are orthogonal. They argue with each other. Get rid of it. Because nobody knows what to do when you have a perpendicular argument like that. So number one, as a manager and leader, you want to look here. Policy and governance. The second area is process. There is a process to everything you're doing. Everybody sitting here has a process model they deal with. Whether it's getting up in the morning and going to bed at night, you can document what you're going to do. Organizations have process architectures, whether it's human resources or whatever. So you understand that. That's the second biggest. Now between these two lies a never-never land, because here's what most people in organizations do first. They go straight for the solution. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just going to buy a solution and go start looking for problems to solve. That is the single most dumbest thing you could possibly do. You have no idea what process is fitting it. You don't know what the rules are, the policy and governance, yet companies do this all the time. And companies like I worked for made billions and billions of dollars helping them out of trouble. When the right way to do it is from the top down. Because when you flip this thing upside down, I'm going to sell you that solution. And then you're going to get in trouble, and I'll be happy to help you define your process architecture and then write the policy and governance. So then we'll flip the triangle back up. Does that make sense? So you're lucky I'm retired. Now, whenever I feel the urge to work, I lie down until it goes away. A couple other things that we want to, yep, we're about done.
5 more minutes.
5 minutes? I got a lot more. Well, he's got a handout. He'll give it to you later.
Are we gonna get these notes?
Yeah. Yeah. Don't confuse output with outcome. Listen to what I just said. Do not confuse output with outcome. You can get a whole lot of busy people doing a whole lot of nothing. Be interested in outcome, not output. Okay? Word to the wise. The other thing that piece of advice is learn to manage your agreements. Learn to manage your agreements. If you have a multiple set of agreements, manage them, feed them. Make sure that they're still operational. If they're not, change them. But the worst thing in the world you can do, in today's environment especially, because all these mistakes happen at the speed of light, is not manage your agreements. Now, I'm not talking about contracts as much as I'm talking about physical agreements. You're going to do this and I'm going to do that, right? And then you go away. And what happens is you come back and you've gone to Abilene. Who knows about Abilene?
Texas.
Paradox.
The Abilene paradox. It's this. I thought you were doing that. No, I thought you were doing that. That's called going to Abilene. Quick story. About 2 years ago, I was working in a bid and proposal. It was going to cost the company $1 million to bid on this contract. And I told them up front, I said, I'm against this. It's not going to work. We don't have the experience. We don't have the resources. And the companies that we're bidding against are already with the customer. And I thought they were going to throw me out of the 13th story window. I said, okay, fine. So that's when I go silent and I sit in the meeting. At the end of the meeting, I said, we're making a big mistake. I don't agree with any of this. Well, they did. They lost the bid. They wasted $1 million of bid and proposal money. And the guy came back to me later on and said, well, we should have listened to you. I said, too late, Bubba. You spent $1 million on it. All right, here's the last little model I'm going to leave you with tonight because we're running out of time. This will get you in trouble real quick, too. Okay. When you define things, the worst thing you can do is not spend enough time defining a problem. We get in trouble with that all the time, especially in the IT business. Spend time defining the problem. So this is a little brain model that might be able to help you do that. Okay, so let's look at this S is simple and this C is complex. Simple problem, simple solution, complex solution. So this is the very essence of engineering, either knowledge engineering or business. A simple problem and a simple solution does what? One word. Work. It works. I know I misspelled that. That's what I add misspelled words to Microsoft Word all the time. And it doesn't tell me it's misspelled. Simple problem, simple solution, it works. Now, if we have a complex problem and a simple solution, what's that going to do? Well, in my experience, it costs a whole lot more money and it takes a whole lot more time. You're in trouble. You didn't spend enough time figuring out the nexus between solution and problem. Now we go to simple problem and complex solution. One word. Okay, I gotta be nice to them. All right.
I said ignorant. Lunatic. I said ignorant. You go lunatic, okay?
You are dealing with a lunatic. Watch out. Somebody walks into your office and says, I've got a simple problem, but this is a solution that's highly complex. Get out. Get out. And last, you have a complex problem and a complex solution. One word.
Nuts.
Screwed.
You are screwed.
That's a good one.
I remember that.
I'm gonna live by this one.
Now, as an engineer, and any engineers in here, right, I know, your job is to force everything into that box. That's good management. That is good management. As an engineer, what I do is start breaking things down into the primitives. Primitive problem, the primitive solution, until it can't be broken down anymore. Okay. Well, my 5 minutes is up. Oh, I got one more thing to share with you. Here's the secret to staying alive in this business today. So I'm going to walk out of here, probably never see you guys again. You learned one thing tonight. This is it. Listen carefully. Be the person everybody wants to work with. For some of you, it's going to be really hard to do that. I can tell just by looking at you in the job. Be the person everybody wants to work with, and you will always have food in the refrigerator. Now, it's easy for me to say, so here's the final secret. This is how you do that.
How you do that?
Every dog gets a bone.
Right.
Every dog gets a bone. Figure out win-wins for everybody. If you can do that, every dog gets a bone, and be the person everybody wants to work with. Thank you. What's the answer to this?
Negative 17?
2?
Negative 17?
2? Who says 2?
17, negative 17.
Negative 17.
17.
I got minus 13.
Wait.
I got
Confusion.
We have an argument now.
Is it a trick or the truth?
6 times
No, there's no trick.
Negative 17.
6 times 3 is 18, plus 2 is 20, minus 3.
Negative 17.
It's minus 13, that's where I got.
Tim dogs.
Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. They ain't no error. Please.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, so nothing is
Because you.
So that's 18.
It's addition for subtraction. If you do odd math.
Right, 18.
minus 3
Minus
times.
18. Oh, yeah.
But you do multiplication first.
No. You always multiply and divide first.